dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the twilight.
I got love for you, no lie. I give my best, I try. Someday you'll touch the sky. You're an angel, look up, baby. Wipe all your tears away. I know it's been crazy, but keep your head up high.
Foot chase through the projects, dodging foreign objects. Street knowledge, I should've went to college. Odds stacked against me, surviving off instinct. 3 blocks from the precinct. Lil' homie caught a case, others lost family members. Product of his environment, projects produce violence in the middle of the streets, cause that's how we eat. Just heard rap about the trap, don't mean I ain't about peace.
We must stand together, all together.
In training still, aka see that?
See that?
Tuning in, helping us to redefine what's cool because
Smart. Gangster.
Baby.
I tried to beat you
Okay.
a little bit, but no, you got me.
And if you don't know,
Now you know. Hold on. Oh, wait. I don't know. Good morning, caller. You live on the radio.
They're not supposed to be calling this.
This Village Inn?
Hello?
Is this the Village Inn restaurant?
Oh, no, you definitely calling the wrong place. Yeah.
Caller, you got the
You
wrong
can't hear
number.
me.
You
got
can.
You ain't hear me.
First of all, you don't have no headphone sets on, so you can't. You don't know if anybody could hear you.
Okay.
I'm telling you, you're being heard.
Okay.
And then you can't reach those. That is not yours.
Okay. Look, it's all.
Don't worry about it. We ain't gonna do this on there.
You started it with Kiana this morning. We got company.
Yeah,
we have a guest in the building.
we
got
do.
family. You don't have company.
Yeah,
You
that's
have
right.
family.
That's what I was about to say. He
We
doing it
have
in front
the
of
beautiful
family. Right. Go ahead.
my auntie
Yeah.
Betty Davis.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank
Morning
you
from
for
the
being
Republic
here.
of Brooklyn.
The Republic of Brooklyn. Look, we from St. Pete. We won't hold it against you.
All right. I don't have to show my passport.
No, you don't have to show your passport. You gotta show you
Diplomatic
that.
community.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
So how was y'all last couple of days? How you feeling this morning?
I'm tired this morning, y'all. Just see, I'm kind of dragging a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
You wearing it well though. I ain't even gonna
Man,
lie.
I'm exhausted already.
What?
Because don't worry, I know what I'm doing.
No, oh Lord.
You do you over there.
Yeah, don't you worry about
Turn
that.
me up. I don't think you hear me.
No, I hear you loud and clear. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. So yeah, these past couple days has been amazing.
One of them days.
Yesterday was the child's party. See, I'm just not. I'm ignoring all of that stuff, and I'm just gonna keep talking like none of this stuff is happening in the background.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
So yesterday, or last night, Childs Park Neighborhood Association meeting was amazing. Lots of energy.
Standing room only.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go get some more chairs.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was absolutely one of those.
All
and,
right, Mr. President.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So president of the Childs Park Neighborhood Association was re-elected last month. And last night was our first meeting as a team, man. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about the path forward. Yeah. And y'all stay tuned because next month we're doing the air quality update. So, we've been doing smell something, say something, you say smell it, tell it.
Smell it, tell it.
But really talking about environmental justice and addressing, just this environmental injustice. And there's a particular company in the neighborhood that's been doing, some injustice. And we have some receipts. And so we'll be bringing the receipts with the Stetson University, USF, Eckerd College. And we're doing a full presentation on where we've been next month. And then next week, since next week's Earth Day, I'm actually going to be on a panel with Walter Smith. You know Walter Smith II. And so I'll be on a panel talking about air quality and environmental injustice. And so, it's all connected.
I think I got a little green thumb. I was planning.
Okay.
I went in my front yard and did some planning. Not last weekend, the weekend before.
I heard there's no such thing as a green thumb.
What?
No.
It is. No, they don't know. They don't know nothing.
Well, no, this is somebody who has a garden in her backyard, and she was I guess that was her way of inspiring us to start. My wife was like, I don't have a green thumb. She was like, there's no such thing as a green thumb. Get out there and do it.
Well, that was a nice motivational speech that she gave.
Yeah.
Well,
encouraging.
I planted some ginger.
Okay.
Is it still alive?
Nice.
Yeah, it was. How I break out from the ginger stalk.
Okay. Okay.
This was probably my first thing planting as a grown adult.
I can't remember what I planted.
I think that ginger. I just planted some ginger. I'm waiting. We're gonna see. I give a report back about the ginger.
Okay. How long ago you planted this?
Like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a week ago.
It seems like ginger might take a while to grow.
No, ginger is already like a root.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's already, once that little green thing start pumping up, you just put it a little under the ground.
Okay. Sound like you got a green thumb.
No
green thumb.
No, maybe we're gonna see.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
I want to do a standing garden too.
Okay.
Like, and because
What you mean standing?
Like, because we can't plant in the dirt here. So because it's.
He hadn't been to the youth farm.
So you can't plant in the dirt here.
No.
In some areas.
I can say because I planted my ginger in the dirt.
In the backyard.
Do you see where Chandra and them, the garden over there? You see how it's not planted into.
They have raised beds.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some
right.
of them.
Right.
Because
why do you have to have raised beds?
Because it's toxics in the dirt.
Is this coming from the Gulf spill? When Exxon had that big oil?
No, I don't think it came from that.
Yeah.
At one point in time,
we need to get an expert.
We were like, but
we had Carla B over here. She got a whole farm in the neighborhood.
She does the youth farm, but I do. So we used to have a lot of fruits.
Miss Teresa, if you listening, tap in, tag us, and let us know.
And they
what's
went
happening.
and sprayed.
Somebody tag Miss Teresa.
And they were saying that it was for the mosquitoes, but it killed all the plants, all the live fruit here. Because we used to have fruit like the city, the state, whoever. I was a little girl.
I remember they used to be spraying. They used to drive a truck down and up and down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember them. I remember the little truck come through
spraying.
And spraying.
I remember that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I literally witnessed it.
You don't remember that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you say I didn't hear you.
That's a
reparations issue. Yes.
They owe us for that.
They owe you for that.
Yeah.
They owe us for a lot.
Yes. Their science is supposed to be more correct than that.
Yeah.
They're wrong. They had the resources, the researchers before they started.
That's right. Yeah.
And they have to be accountable.
And I think all of these things that they come back and apologize for later should be reparations
I hate
issues.
apologies later. Like I don't want especially with my health.
Yeah.
With our
right the first time.
Yeah, because they know they already wrong, so they really not even sorry.
And you don't know the residual effects on childbirth.
Right.
Yes.
And breathing issues.
That's right. That's right.
And you're talking about the vulnerability of the young.
Mhm.
So this is intergenerational.
Pull her mic up for me.
There we go.
Right.
It's intergenerational.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth, because we're dealing with the effects of it now. Generations later.
Right. Right.
You know, like in New York, when we had lead in the paint, the walls,
Mhm.
and then the children are affected. You have a lot more children who have attention deficit and syndrome.
Wait, we still got lead in the wall right now.
Yeah, we actually work. That's another campaign I'm working on.
Yeah, the lead paint in the walls.
I'm actually working
And
as
that's
a part
not
of that
something
right now.
any
Yeah.
individual can handle by themselves. It's why you form government to handle problems that a whole community has to solve.
Yes.
And that's why you pay taxes, to give the government the ability to help solve these problems for you. When a government does not do that, and you're entitled to reparations and replacement of that government.
That's right.
Replace.
No, repair and replace.
Wow.
Repair and replace. No, but that's to your point about lead. There's actually someone part of this Healthy Homes Coalition right now. And the idea is to help to organize the community to begin to address lead paint in walls and remediate it, because there's a certain there's special certifications that you have to have in order to even remove lead paint. And so the city of St. Pete is actually offering training to show contractors how to get the certification, get them the certification. And then we're working to identify those in the community who may have still have lead paint in their homes to be able to get it remediated. Because in the South Side CRA, they said I think like 70% of the homes were created or built before 1978, and that was when they stopped using lead paint.
Especially Charles Park, because we got some of the oldest housing stock in the city.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this, right? What about the people who've painted over the lead paint?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a test for that. Yeah, that's a part of this remediation.
But that's about. But how can I find you when you painted over the lead paint and you don't even know?
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying? It's like a Rubik's cube.
That's one of the questions that we're asking
it's a
as part
Rubik's
of the
cube
coalition, and there's some answers that's coming up right now. They have testing that they can do. It's just if you suspect it, or if you know that your house was built, prior to this date, then you can invite them in to come in and do the testing to see if you actually have lead paint that has been painted over. So right now, the stage that we're in is the coalition is developing a strategic plan. The idea is to have the community coalition come up with the strategy on how to do the outreach and how to actually get the word out about it, not following the traditional model of, okay, the city says this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, but inviting community to be a part of the process to say this is how we should do it. Yeah.
And it's also pivotal because you then have to have the children who have been residents along with their parents in these apartments and in these houses. They have to be tested.
Yes.
And then when they are tested, if that result is evident, then the state is responsible for making sure they have all of the educational reparations to be able to catch up and compensate for what was done to them.
Right.
So that means special programs in schools to identify these children.
The Pinellas County Health Department actually is a part of that work as well, and so they have some federal funding. Interesting enough, we talk about federal funding.
Yes, that's
with
why
federal funding. But here's the federal funding cuts. The issues like they kind of walk in light. But yeah, Pinellas County, we just did a presentation last month at EDOC where we had them come in and talk about how they do the testing for lead. They're not calling it lead poisoning anymore. They call it elevated blood lead levels or something like that. It's elevated levels of lead in your blood.
Shrieking responsibility is a legal thing, right? But that's another conversation.
Okay. All right, so you listen to the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club right here on 99.1 FM, 99 Jams the Bird. We're celebrating 10 years, y'all. 10 years of broadcasting in the Tampa Bay area. A decade. How about that? Ooh. I want some more decades.
1/10 of a century.
1/10 of a century.
99 Jams have been here.
Doing it. For
feeding
real.
y'all information.
And the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club been here 7 out of those 10.
Why you keep taking years? I thought it was 8 or 9.
I mean, I'm doing the math. That's all.
Okay.
I'm just
I
doing the math.
Why
We
you
just got a 10-year. We got a 10-year anniversary on
Yeah,
Facebook.
we already walked through that one. We walked through when we started.
Don't worry about it. What Facebook said was okay. I ain't gonna say nothing.
Okay, so is it possible that we started the Facebook page before we had
We
this
did.
radio? Okay, so and how long
That's
before
the
we started?
celebration you had? You had a
Okay.
celebration.
We talking about here on the radio station. We just talking about being on the radio station.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna rewind the tape. It may be about 3 minutes, and we just gonna go back. So, welcome to the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club, y'all. We're celebrating 10 years on 99 of the bird.
You know what that means? It means 10 years that you were comrades together.
Yes, yes. Oh, we got more than that.
Solidarity together.
Yeah, we have more
And
than
a
that.
sense of community together.
Yes, yes.
Building community in the
10
community.
years you do that.
Yeah,
This has been like a live journal.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you say of the community work we've been doing,
You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
Because this started because of some community work we was doing. It was Amendment 4.
Yeah.
And this was before I was even associated with for the Rights Restoration Coalition.
Yeah, this was
Yeah, because I'm just thinking we was with for the Rights Restoration Coalition, but this was at least a year before that.
yeah, this was 2018 when we started that. We started in June of 2018. And in June of 2018, we talked to, well, maybe before that, May of 2018, we had a conversation with Don J, and we let him know that we wanted to, get on the radio to talk about Amendment 4, which is rights restoration, voting rights restoration for returning citizens. And that was an amendment that was on the ballot to, basically said that, if you served your time and completed your sentence, you should be able to vote. And so we wanted to bring awareness to that, talk to people about it. And Don J graciously opened up the doors and gave us 30 minutes on Mondays to come in and talk about Amendment 4, to mobilize our community, to really inform them.
Because people didn't even know about it.
No, had no
There wasn't
idea.
nobody talking about it. And we was like, you know what? We need to.
Yeah, we
Usually
need to,
nobody's ever talking about
Yeah.
too much
well,
about
I mean, I won't say nobody.
High schools.
Well, a lot of
I won't
people,
say
let me say not
Yeah,
nobody.
it wasn't
Yeah.
a big
It
thing.
wasn't enough
Go to
people.
high schools and speak about this.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Because it's coming back again, with
Oh,
taking away of their rights to speak on community issues that involve freedom.
that's right.
You need to let them know that unless they do something, nothing will be done and it will only get worse.
That's
Unless
right.
they do something, nothing will be done, and it will only get worse. That's the truth, and that was the motivation. The motivation was to get in, have conversations with community, and after the campaign, hugely successful. We had a great, turnout locally, and then
From the petitions
yeah,
to the voter registration
yeah,
to the vote.
to the actual
So
voting. Yeah,
we kind of like jumped in
yeah.
when they first was passed out the petition trying to get to 200,000.
We did like voter education,
Yeah.
You know what? And
voter
we
registration,
don't have to stop.
and then voter turnout. Okay.
We know we're not like because we gotta take a break, but
Yeah.
we'll be back.
And when we come back, like we're gonna do a deep dive with Aunt Betty because I want to hear your story. Yeah, because y'all know we all about new images and intergenerational sharing,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Love that.
we're gonna do some of that this morning. I do have Ask Ken. I got what the people say. We got some politics with Mr. Edmund, and so y'all make sure that y'all.
You know what? I did have Would You Rather, but we can
Okay.
do that.
We can
We'll
Would
do
You
that
Rather.
when we come back.
Well, how about that? How about you give it to us now, and then we get the answers when we come back. What's the question? I'll put it in the chat.
Would you rather
Okay.
when you go to the store buy 10 extra items every time you go, or forget one item every time you go?
Okay. We'll put it in the chat and we'll answer when we come back. All right.
I know that one. And see, I want to just forget
When
one.
we come back,
All
y'all.
right.
Y'all ready to do it? Depends on the item.
Okay.
Give me my Facebook.
Founded the Documentation Centre of Cambodia, which is housed an archive of a variety.
U.S.
I'll text you
Border Protection on Sunday as he crossed into Vermont.
And just like that, guess what?
We're back.
We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back.
Back. We're back to do it, y'all. Welcome back to the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club. I'm your brother John.
And this is Kiana.
And I'm the one and only Mr. Edmund.
This program is being brought to you as part of the New Image Project, the Community Development and Training Center, aka See That.
See that.
And we would like to thank y'all for tuning in to help us to redefine what school, because
smart
is
the new
gangsta.
Baby. If you don't know,
now you know.
Now you know.
So I don't know. Like, I'm seeing y'all and everybody seeing no sound. It was no sound on purpose.
Okay.
We was on break.
We was on break.
Oh,
Okay.
that's why you're supposed to play something so they don't just see us sitting there.
I don't know that we
Okay,
did, but
God bless America.
good morning, Tiffany. Can you hear us? Tiffany just
She
said,
said, "Good morning, friend."
Yeah.
There it is.
If you can hear us, just put a smiley face on,
Yeah.
or say yes.
clap your hands.
Or just
Clap
say
your
yeah.
If you can't hear, just put a frowny face.
Clap your hands. All right, and we also have a guest, not a guest, a family member that's in town and stopping by to spend the morning with us on the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club, and so we're excited.
Yeah, it's so funny. So I put in the group chat.
Okay.
I'm like, my auntie Betty here for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to have her on the show? Now, Mr. Edmund ignore us all the time. I don't care what we put in the group chat. He ignore us. We got to do a post check to make sure he's still alive
Do a wellness check.
all the time.
Yeah, she did. Hey, you just a wellness check. I'm checking on you.
Yeah.
Because he don't respond. Immediately he say,
Oh,
yes.
No, you're right. You're right. I see what you was going. I didn't know where you was going with that. But you're right. Because we do like have like those vacuums in the chat.
Yes.
But when we said Auntie Betty was in town, he was the first one to
And
respond.
we have real serious conversations that we need input in, and he would ignore us.
Yeah.
Straight ignore
Yeah.
like he ain't never got it. No, nothing. I said, Auntie Betty.
Look, it's been so bad. Well, I've sent him something, and then he'll ask me, "Did I see it?" He was like,
I don't believe them. I want you to know. I don't.
Okay.
I don't believe what they say about it.
Okay.
We have proof. We
No,
have
we,
proof.
and we only said it because it's true, and because we love him. And
It's the truth. It's the truth. But
This
you
is
not
a
seen it, and it
testimony
was,
about
yeah.
you.
It was. Because I was like, yeah, you know what you mean.
that ain't even a question.
Yeah.
That's not even a question if we want you to come in and
Well,
really
I'm
share.
very happy to be here because I don't know if Floridians understand their role in the history of uprisings in this country. The Africans who came to this part of the world that the Europeans decided to name Florida, they had the highest number of uprisings for their freedom.
Wow.
And their strategy was the water is close to where Florida is. And the Caribbean, they knew about the Caribbean and certain countries, you know, over there. And their thought was if we go from Florida to the Caribbean back to Africa.
Okay.
And there were uprisings to such an extent that the federal government had to adopt policy and address it. It was a major war fought here against the Africans who had a relationship with the original people who were here, the people of Turtle Island, as they called themselves.
Wow.
That the Europeans named Indians because they couldn't read the maps that Africans had had for centuries, which told them this was not India.
Right.
So I'm very honored to be in Florida. You have an incredible history of struggling against what they call slavery. And I want to remind everybody on this call, you were never slaves. And the proof of it is after 400 years, the Black people still laugh, they still dance, they still write poetry.
Yeah.
The poetry is the poetry of their music and the poetry of the way they talk to each other. We have been recreating the English language ever since we stepped shores. They can't wait for a Black kid to come up with a phrase so they can use it to sell their products. Anybody who can manipulate language is brilliant by their own standards.
Yes.
And don't let them dummy down your culture. Okay, and I hope that this generation will continue to always come up with new music. The music that this generation has created, 75% of the world plays all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you go to other countries, including those countries identified as European, They all want to be like our young people. That is what makes you so threatening. You have a revolutionary culture, and it grows out of the love, and that love was the struggle to keep your humanity.
I love
And
that.
Florida has a lot of burial grounds. Don't let them totally destroy all of your African burial grounds, because that is the proof of the savagery of the type of captivity that they had here. One of the things that we must understand is that the slavery that existed in America had never existed any place in the world. In the rest of the world, the captives had the right to fight to the death to get their freedom. But in this country, they said you were not human. In other cultures, they did not say that you were not human. They knew you were human. And they valued the fact that you would fight for your right to be free. This country said we were not human. And we have been fighting against that ever since.
Auntie Bet, I want you to walk us, help us with this timeline. And, because you started a little bit before us. Right?
Yes, yes.
And so, for those who, may not know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about some of your history in this journey that we're on towards our freedom and liberation as a people?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to my brother, James, Uncle James, because if that's what everybody called him. He was a very, very strong personality. He was an entrepreneur. He was very proud of himself. The first thing I remember when I came here, I left as 8 months old when my birth mother transitioned, and my uncle, who was a member of the Pullman Porters, which, as you know, is a very historical working class organization. Those of you who remember the march, the first march on Washington, A. Randolph was responsible for that. And my father worshipped A. Philip Randolph.
Wow.
He was very, very proud of being a union member. And I want to say that to all the Africans who are listening here, that you do have the right to organize and to unionize. And now more than ever, we need a general strike, because this is a war not just against people who look like us, who have African skin. This is a war against the working class as well. We cannot forget that Trump is a member of a vicious, greedy, avarice ruling class. And they are content with him ruling because they did not have to let him gain ascendancy in the Republican Party if they were not content with his rule.
That's right.
And so this is a struggle of the working class against the ruling class. It is not just a color issue. And don't let the people who have no melanin and are not quite bright make you think it's anything else but a ruling class war. There is always racism, but this is not just about racism. This is an attack on the ruling class. And my struggle grew out of the fact that we were the generation coming out of the uprising in the South.
For context, do you mind sharing your age?
Oh, no, I'm 81.
Okay, there we go.
And I graduated from college in 1964.
Okay.
And when I graduated, what was happening was struggles of that, included the bus rides to the South.
Okay.
Although they could have just as well stayed up north because it was just down south and up south. They were at their peak.
The Freedom Ride.
The Freedom Ride.
Yes.
But what happened was the Vietnam War started escalating. And because there was the draft, a lot of the young European males who did not want to go to war, they started having a campaign to prevent them from having to deal with the draft.
Okay.
So the war, not to be drafted, began to supplant the war to be drafted to go south and fight for concrete freedoms, such as the right to vote, the right to have housing where you want it.
What we refer to now as the civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement.
Okay.
And see, one of the reasons I've always followed the teachings of Malcolm X is because right from the beginning, there were many people who said what Malcolm X said. This is not a civil rights issue. This is a human rights issue. When you make it a human rights issue, they cannot take it away from you. You have the moral underpinnings for constant, continuous struggle.
Right.
And unfortunately, on this planet, there is always going to be a struggle to be human.
Wow.
Because there's always a dehumanizing issue based on what people think they need in terms of money. Okay, you're always going to have a wealthy class that never gets enough.
Yeah.
Wealth is an illness. The concept of acquisitions and constant acquiring things is an illness. It is not natural to human beings.
So, as a college senior in 1964, what's on the news? What's going on?
Well, we were struggling for then because that was what we knew. Everybody wanted to take political science because they believed in civil rights. And so they thought their rights would come through the courts.
Oh.
And so what we are learning now.
Is that what you studied? Did you study political
science?
science?
I was a political science major with a minor in English.
Okay.
And it was English because I loved reading. I read everything. And that's what I would say to parents who are raising their children. Let them read everything. Let them read, well, nothing that's dangerous, but let them read whatever their interests are, because sooner or later they will be reading the stuff that matters to them in their life.
Yes.
Just let them read, encourage them to read wherever their area of interest is. And because I read everything, I minored in English, but I majored in political science because everything was, all of our rights were coming through the decisions of the Supreme Court at that time.
Okay.
Starting with the decision Brown versus the Board of Education.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, that's not the first time that there was a case like that. At least 100 years before that, there was a family, I think they were an African family in Connecticut, that brought a case. It was either Connecticut or Boston, saying our children are going to separate schools that are not equal, and we cannot guarantee our children's humanity if they're constantly in inferior schools.
Right.
What I would say, what I still say to people today is, that struggle around separate but equal, I think we now know that was a bad strategy.
Okay.
Because when we started to integrate, all of our businesses were lost.
Yeah.
We lost our businesses.
What would you attribute that to?
Because then Black people were integrating into the majority culture, and the businesses that they had of their own, they were not able to keep them going because there weren't enough Africans still coming and using
Okay,
business.
so now that you have these options, you're exercising the option to go to something.
But one of the things that we did do, you had two struggles going on at the same time. One of the people that was very well known in New York City was a woman by the name of Queen Mother Moore.
Okay.
And her history was that she was one of those that fought to free the Scottsboro boys.
I remember
and
her
she
name.
used to tell us the story being in New Orleans when Marcus Garvey came to their church. And the elements that be, i.e. the police in that state, heard that Marcus Garvey was there, and they came to surround the church and tell people that they better not allow Marcus Garvey to speak.
Wow.
And Marcus Garvey said to the congregation, and this is a true story, she was there, do you want me to speak? And she said everybody in that church pulled out their gun and said, speak, Marcus.
Wow.
Speak.
Wow.
So when they say you got your freedom through the barrel of a gun, this is not a lie. This is how these people took this country. They took it from the British with a gun. They did not march. They did not pray. They took it with a gun. Just a little fact.
I hear that.
So Queen Mother Moore was the person who, for many of us, was our mentor into the movement.
Okay.
And her favorite statement that she would say, you may not remember this phrase, but Black people used to say they lived in a ghetto.
Yeah.
And you know, there are some songs
there's a song about
the
it.
ghetto.
Yeah.
And she would say, study history.
Yeah.
She said the ghettos of Europe were the Jewish ghetto.
Yep.
She said Black people have never lived in the ghetto. She said because the Jewish ghettos in Europe, the Jewish people owned every single penny that came in and went out of their ghetto. She said Black people do not control anything in their ghetto, don't even claim to be a ghetto until you control every institution in your ghetto. She says you live in a colony. You are colonized people, even if you are in America, because you do not control your institutions. And so what she did was she made it clear to us, the first institution that you should try to control is the educational system in your community.
Right.
And it goes back to the Black Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And she made us listen very carefully. You need to go back and read the history of the Black Reconstruction.
Yes.
Because although there were schools And Thomas Jefferson, the worst slaver in the world, he is the one that coined the phrase about Africans never being human.
Wow.
He said some terrible things about Africans and the First Nation people in his book, I think, called The Notes of Virginia.
Wow.
Very, very sick document that, Europeans like to praise.
Mm-hmm.
However, the first, out of that Black Reconstruction Congress came the foundation for the public school system being embedded in the community.
Yeah.
And this is why when COVID hit and Trump tried to make everybody go back to school, he could not do it because the schools belong to the community.
Yeah.
And the reason I am saying this is because now Africans in this country have an excellent opportunity to take back their educational institutions because the whole tax base of the public schools is based on the tax base and based on the parents controlling their schools. And this is why throughout America, the majority of European American parents do not have charter schools because they control their public schools.
Okay.
And one of the things Queen Mother taught us is that a colony is an economic institution.
Mm-hmm.
A school is not just about teachers or the philosophy that's in that school.
Right.
A school is an institution of contracts.
Okay.
So somebody has to buy the desk.
Okay. Yeah.
Somebody has to paint the building.
There we go. Yeah.
Somebody has to do the electrical repairs.
That's right.
Somebody has to install the furniture. Somebody has to deliver the paper. Somebody has the contract to buy the paper. All of that represents jobs on every economic level for the community.
And those are not nonprofit businesses.
Those are not nonprofit businesses.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you talk about a public school is a capitalist business enterprise, as well as an institution of ideology. And so when we look at it from that point of view, then you are attacking colonialism at its roots. And that's how I got started.
Wow. That was him. Rico,
so
you
take
in?
back your schools now.
I said Rico.
The
Rico
folks
probably
they don't
loving
want
it.
them, so take them yourselves.
Yeah.
You have that law. It's the law.
Yeah.
The schools belong to the public and the community that they're in.
So I got a question, and it's kind of different, but how did you get involved with radio?
My companion of 50 years, Ralph Pointer, I helped him run his radio blog. It was called Ralph Pointer What's Happening.
Okay.
And as a result of that blog being very successful for over 10 years, WBAI, which is Pacifica Public Free Access Radio, invited him to have a program on WBAI. And so when he transitioned, he said, pick up the work. Those were the last phrases he said. Keep it going, pick up the work.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
I hear that. And speaking of radios, we saw this. We talked about it on the break that the Trump administration is seeking to.
They said they need you.
Billions, slashing billions, over $9 billion in funding, targeting PBS, NPR, and foreign programs. The plan is called a rescission package to cancel funding for already approved. So they're canceling funding that's already approved by Congress, including money for the USAID and other agencies like the U.S. Institute of Peace. This proposal was crafted by DOGE, which is Trump's, cost-cutting, so-called cost-cutting initiative being led by Elon Musk. And under the plan,
DOGE is his Bitcoin or something. Is that right?
No, that's a department of.
No, but it's something else to him as well.
I want to stay on this.
Okay, go ahead.
And so what under this DOGE, they said, here's some of the priorities. Under the plan, PBS, which gets about 16% of its budget from the federal government, and NPR, which gets about 1%, would lose all of their federal funding. The package was sent to Congress on will be sent to Congress on April 28th, and it's kicking off a 45-day window where lawmakers can actually vote on the cuts or let them quietly expire. So public radio is under attack.
So donate.
Yes.
We're still we're doing our spring marathon.
Yes.
We are still accepting donations. We do what we do for the people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so again, this is community radio. The way that we stay on is your donation.
Yeah,
Just
and
FYI.
I want to speak to that because recently there was a targeted abstaining from purchasing from certain major business corporations
Yes.
in America.
Yes.
I don't want to create a problem, so I'm not going to name them.
Okay.
But the targeted absence of economic support for these business organizations is very successful.
Yes.
So what I'm saying to Black people, a woman from the Caribbean once said to me, Miss Davis, Africans in America are some of the richest slaves in the world.
Wow.
So start being aware of where you're spending your money. And instead of going to that particular store and buying things that you don't need and buying 2 and 3 of them, consciously thinking you've got a game you want to play with us today. I think you will do that. Leave those 10 things that you don't need.
Yeah.
Be conscious of those 10 things that you buy that you know you don't need and donate some of that money to a station that's giving you information and to help them fight back and resist what's coming now.
Wow.
And you must think strategic. The government that is in power now does not want you to have your schools, does not want you to control what's taught in your schools, does not want you to have proper health care, and does not want you to be able to complain about it. That is why they're shutting down your radio station.
Wow.
Auntie, can you tell the people some of the stuff that you and Uncle Raph did, like some of the big movements and the stuff that y'all kind of tackled in this country?
Yeah, if you Google Ocean Hill-Brownsville, Ocean Hill-Brownsville was a conscious uprising in New York City. We physically and mentally and politically took our public school system. Because even though our African ancestors during the Black Reconstruction did create a foundation for public schools being embedded in the community, Africans in this country have never had equal rights. And so that meant that Europeans controlled our public school system. We had
Was
a
that
centralized,
1968?
New York City had a central board of education.
Okay.
And it was a twofold type of board of education because they said New York City is the place where most of the immigrants come.
Okay.
So the first invaders who were from England decided that they were more white than those coming from Italy or those coming even from Germany. The invaders who came from England felt they were superior to the Germans and all the others. And each group of Europeans who came here had to buy into and become super white.
Yeah.
But of course, you know what this meant. This meant Africans could never become white, and so they could never control their institutions. So New York had the double whammy. It didn't have enough whites who were of British extraction, and it didn't have, it had too many people who looked like you and me.
Yeah.
And so this meant that in the 60s, when we were talking about civil rights, and we thought we could integrate, it was obvious it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So then Black people.
When did it become obvious that it was?
I think it became obvious, if you ask me, when those bombings were going on.
Okay. When they were
Because
bombing,
not many
like
people
Wall
don't
Street,
understand is that Martin
Tulsa.
Luther King always
that-
said that something seriously wrong with capitalism.
Okay.
He also said when you see these rebellions, people call them riots. He said, no, these are rebellions. These are uprisings against this justice.
Yeah.
They were never criminal enterprises.
And you think that was like the point when people
that
started
was
to
the point when
realize that
people started to
this
realize
idea of integration may not be.
And
really
he
true.
also said, I didn't realize this until much later. He said, there is no way I would agree to sending our babies into these schools to integrate them. He did not agree with integration for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade children.
Wow.
Because he knew the nature of the beast and the viciousness that was there to meet them when they went in.
Because they don't see our children as children.
And in New York City, people just began to say to themselves, we want schools that are closest to us, to be accountable to us, to produce the type of excellence that they produce for the white students. We know our children are teachable, educable, and we want to control that. We want them to see people who look like their parents, so that they can grow up with pride in what they are and who they are.
And so
so the community control struggle came from that.
I did what you said. I Googled it, and it says in Brooklyn, in the early spring of 1968, Black and Puerto Rican parents organized for better schools for their children. Their demands were as follows: the right to hire and fire all principals, assistant principals, and teachers. Those who work hard to teach our children are welcome to stay. Those who won't cooperate must and will go.
There you go.
The right to control our all of our own money in our own bank. That every child in our district gets the same amount of money as the children in white neighborhoods.
Very important.
The right to buy our own books, supplies, and by direct purchase, talking about the economics. And then the right to build and rehabilitate our schools using Black and Puerto Rican companies and workers from our own communities.
That sounds like something we need here.
Everybody has it already. That is the point I want Africans to understand. Everybody has it already. The New York City school budget, just New York City, is the 23rd largest budget in the world.
Wow.
Okay, in the world, there are
Wow.
countries that don't have as much money as the New York City school budget. Even with the cut from the federal government, the state of New York owes New York City billions toward education because we've got that tax base. All right. Now, we're not just talking about progressive, we're talking about regressive taxes. Nobody buys more sodas than Black people. Every time you buy a soda, there's your taxes, but there's your tax base right there. We all in Florida, I'm surprised at how many Black people actually own their homes. They don't just rent their homes.
Yeah.
They own their homes.
Right.
Okay. That's the tax base right there. That money is not coming back to you the way it goes back to European Americans.
Wow.
And this is the fault. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you Southerners gonna be angry with me. This is the fault of the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is the one that administrates the funds coming from the federal government to the states and to the city. And this is why they lost the election.
Okay.
Because I told you about
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. See where you get it from. Let the people know who that was.
So this is my grandfather's baby sister.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is my Aunt Betty. And
Great aunt.
yeah.
I got a couple questions.
Great
Somebody asked,
Go ahead.
who is she representing and where you from? I got a question.
I'm from Brooklyn, the Republic of Brooklyn. And in the last 20 years,
But you was born here in Florida.
I was born in Tampa, Florida. But at the time that I was born in Tampa, Florida, which was 1944, Black people were being exterminated because after World War II, what was going on in the South is just unspeakable in terms of economic deprivation. And so a lot of people, about the migrations. There was a major migration after World War I. Well, those numbers really escalated during World War II. Black people voted with their feet like nothing you've ever seen. And since we were already here, they couldn't send us to Mexico or any place else like they're doing the asylum seekers who are coming here. One of the things I respect about the asylum seekers is if you ask any of them, why are you coming here? They say, because everything we had back in our country was stolen by the Americans who control our government. So we come in here to get a little of it back. And you have to recognize that the imperialism that we are experiencing in our own communities, where we are paying our taxes, but we do not get the equivalent back in services. You are not slaves. You work hard. You pay taxes. Those taxes are supposed to come back to you in certain services. That means that when there is a crisis, FEMA is supposed to do the same thing for the African family as they do for the European family. And FEMA itself admits that's not happening. So I had to laugh when they said Trump was going to cut FEMA. I said, well, he's just cutting it for the white folks because Black people never got their equal share.
Wow.
So this is the type of community control we're talking about. But specifically with the schools, when you are paying your taxes and there's a contract, we've got just as many skilled workers as the Europeans. Because remember, we built this country. We were the companies. We were the painters. All right. We were the skilled labor force.
And I want to just go back to this real quick because what you did, I mean, it's right here. It's like documented as a part of history. So we talked about the demands,
Yes.
and here was the response. So in response to their demands, the Central Board of Education approved a pilot community school program. The new community level school boards replaced the top-down civil servants and school board decision makers. Last sentence. In this pilot program, school districts were given the power to make hiring, policy, and budget decisions at the local level.
Yes, but who was responsible for overseeing that process?
Okay.
That became the Democratic Party.
Okay. That's how
Power
you get it.
base.
Okay.
They got their monies from that.
Wow.
And in the white school district, they delivered. The white school districts, the contracts were owned by the whites in that neighborhood.
Mhm.
Italians in the Italian neighborhood, they got the contracts to do the building, to do the painting, to do the maintenance of the building.
Yeah.
We're not talking college degrees here.
Yeah.
Okay, because the majority of our people do not have college degrees.
Right.
But there are a whole lot of entry-level skills that are involved in this contract. I'll give you an example, and I'm going to jump ahead.
Sure.
When Bloomberg became the mayor of New York City, the first thing he said when he took over the Board of Education, and if you notice, most of these districts in the cities in America, whether you have mayoral control or where you have a large number of African children,
Mm-hmm.
they say, oh, you don't know how to manage your company. We got to take it over. What's the difference between that and what happened in Africa in the early 1900s?
Wow.
Okay, It's a colony. They needed money. They took it from us. The first thing Bloomberg did was he said, no one can have a contract with the New York City Board of Education school system that has a an economic base of less than $2 million. So right away, some of our Black book companies that had contracts with the Board of Ed were automatically out.
Wow. Because they changed the standard.
Yes. So that's pure capitalism. That is when you become a colony. They set the standards for who can have a contract with the board, and they set it so high that they immediately eliminated all of the Spanish-speaking Latin country citizens who had contracts with the Board of Ed. And one of our favorite book companies, Dare Books, D-A-R-E, lost their contract with the Board of Ed.
Wow.
Because
And
how
I
many
saw that.
companies have a $2 million budget?
And I saw that in there, and I mean, it's just when you talk about revolutionary thinking, right? And like this in my mindset, it just shifted my mind because the way you look at the school system and you start to see the enterprise, we focus on the education, the discipline, but we don't focus on, to your point, the enterprise of education, the books, the schools, the paper, the desk, the chairs, the maintenance, the building.
And mind you, she also is an educator, a principal. Like,
right, she being modest.
So I got a real question then. So, and this come from out the comment section. How do we attack these systems? How do we do something about
Now that's a great question, because you see, I don't know where to begin first. I think you should fight the economic war of demanding your fair share of contracts, no matter where you are. It shouldn't just be in education.
Yeah.
Wherever we are as Africans in the cities or the countries, we should demand our fair share of contracts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was never about getting into school and integrated and sitting next to a white child in order to learn.
It was about
That's
that
an
work.
insult. I don't need somebody white to make me feel human. Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Because they need to sit next to me to become human. They're the ones who are doing the lynching and the raping.
Yeah.
There is an African burial ground in Bethesda, Maryland, which was based on rape. They created slaves. As soon as a child had menses, a female child had menses, they raped her to produce slave babies. And so the death rate in this Bethesda, Maryland cemetery for Africans was 60% because the little girls bled out. They were too young to produce babies, and so they bled to death in childbirth. Now, people like that, I don't need to sit next to them to be human. Are you kidding?
That's right.
And they need to show us reparations for that.
Yes.
To counteract for that. This country, when you talk about slavery, you weren't just talking about slave labor. We built the country, yes, But do you know they rented out the little 5-year-olds for sex parties? Come on, I don't need to sit next to somebody like that to get my humanity.
That's right.
They will never be able to compensate me and give me reparations for that. I'll never forgive them. I don't care what the Christians or anybody other religion says. There's no excuse for that kind of barbarism. And so when you talk about Africans, oh, they're fighting, oh, they're shooting. Well, anger has to go someplace. And this is why we need to teach our children the truth of history. Because when you teach them the truth of history, they will know it is not their fault that they are not economically successful.
Yeah, there's a system.
And it begins with the schools. This is why you must take back your schools. And you must teach the history, and they know that.
Wow.
So this is a wonderful opportunity. And the Democratic Party in New York City gave us decentralization.
Okay.
We asked for community control, which is what the European American citizens have.
Community control.
Yes, and they gave us demonstration districts as if to say, well, we got to see if you know how to run your own institution.
Wow.
That's an insult.
Wow.
Why do we have to have an experiment for democracy?
Oh, they call them pilots now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They don't do that with new Italians coming here.
Yeah.
They don't do that with the Ukrainians coming here.
Wow.
How dare they?
Wow.
And I've been here 500 years. Well, 400 years.
Yeah.
And I need an experiment in democracy. No, you need the experiment.
That's a refreshing view on it, right? Because that perspective is amazing.
Somebody wants the phone number. Rico.
But I really want to speak to Florida because you have a history here that they're afraid will come back. You have a history here of struggling for freedom and liberation. That's why you have a lot more African burial grounds that they have bricked over than any other place because there were lots of uprisings here. You have a wonderful history of struggling for human rights. We don't call them civil rights. Never call them civil rights because they can take those away. Human rights are grounded in the fact that you were born human. And every human has the right to self-determination. If you can take a plant and a plant will assert itself.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You mean to tell me I'm a human and I can't assert myself because you see more melanin in my skin?
Yeah.
Race is a false concept. Yeah. You know, there's no such thing as red roses or white roses. It's a rose.
Yeah.
Is a rose.
A rose is a rose. So listen, y'all, listen to the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club, and we have Betty in the building. She is a civil and human rights veteran, a long time soldier in the cause, and we're just blessed and honored with her presence. She's given us some of the insights and wisdom that comes with doing this for decades, as we were talking about earlier. And the focus of the conversation has been around some work that she did in New York around Ocean Hill. Give it to me again. It's Ocean Hill
Brownsville, yes.
And this was in 1968. And this was a lot was happening in 1968. Like sanitation strike, like a lot of things were happening in that time period. And so this is a question that just came up for me when we talk about unity. You know, because there's always a conversation about how we need to come together, and we romanticize about the unity that we had, you know, back in the day. Is that something that's real, or is that something that's imagined and we just want it to be what it was? Like, were people as united in the 60s as we think?
I'm going to tell you the truth. The unity of the 60s grew out of the culture of Africans in this country.
Okay.
Look. After the most brutal form, the most vicious form of captivity in the history of the world, even the Roman captivity was not as bad as what the English did to humans on this continent. Okay. We could still sing. That's very important. We could still, whatever worship we were allowed, we still worship together, and we still kept our humanity. How do I know? Because people were escaping. Even during the worst form of slavery, people were escaping.
Right.
That took unity. They like to emphasize the Africans who, shall we say, ratted out their companions who were escaping.
Yeah.
They don't give honor to all the slaves who died under torture, rather than tell who
was organizing.
They don't talk about how they used the religion. Not every African that went to church believed in the religion that the Europeans were trying to force them to accept, which was that their religion wanted them to obey white people.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the Bible that says that.
Right.
Okay, they knew that.
Yeah.
They knew
but
that.
they misinterpreted it.
They used that religion. They don't tell you about the Africans who built a quilt, and the quilt would tell people we're going to be escaping on a certain day at a certain time in a certain place.
Yeah.
And hung the quilt up on a clothesline so that people could see
Wow.
it. They don't tell you about how they created songs that had symbols in them that said, someone was saying goodbye to their family. I'm escaping now. That kind of unity then morphed into the Civil War. And in the Civil War, they would not have won that war. We're talking about the North that believed in a certain type of capitalism versus the agrarian culture of the Southern white.
Yeah.
That's what that war was about.
Okay. It's a cultural war.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Africans made the difference. And the war that the Africans fought, more than 5 million of them, was the difference that helped the North win that fight.
Wow.
And see, the danger was that they put those guns down. They allowed the Southern European to keep their guns. Nobody ever lets, when you win a war, you never let your enemy keep your guns. But the North let the Europeans in the South keep their guns. And the Africans, for whatever reason, please don't let me curse on the air, gave their guns in.
Yeah. Wow.
So how after you win a war do you give your guns in and let the people who enslaved you still have their guns? I don't understand. That was a strategic error. And Africans need to look at that. But it was the unity of people who were escaping and the unity and collaboration of these men and women like Harriet Tubman. Underestimate her role in this struggle. She really was a general. You had an underground railroad system. So the unity of the 60s is a legacy of that.
Okay.
When people escaped during the huge migrations in this country, there was a unity of the Africans who were already in the cities, who let them come into their homes and double up with them and taught them how to survive in the city. And you can't just go to any geographical location, not know who the sick cops are, not know where you can go when you need medicine and get it for free. That was a structure there. That was a community there. So that unity is what we built on.
So you had real community.
You had real community. And people raised other people's children when they were at work. And they collaborated. But I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing now in the cities is there's a whole group of young people who are doing that for each other.
Okay. And I wanted to just go back.
They call them welfare mothers. These welfare mothers collaborate with each other and they help each other out. That is still there. That's why they're being attacked. Okay. And so they had to use the social work system to destroy the Black family. They have always been at war with our families because they know that unity is there. And that unity goes out of our culture. The African culture was a powerful culture.
Wow. I mean, I just, you're right, Mr. Edmond. I think you used the word refreshing on the take, and it's empowering because for me, and I'll tell you, I'm familiar with some of this history, but the lens and the way that you're presenting it, it's really eye-opening, and it's reminding me of what caused me to change.
Yes,
it was because when I learned and I heard the truth of our history and the truth of our real struggle, not because what's presented to us is like we were just a subservient group and we just went along with everything that was being presented, and there was a few that got unruly, but they were immediately squashed. We don't hear this history of how there was constant and ongoing rebellion and uprising, and like it's always presented like that was an anomaly. Like if a Black person ran away from slavery, that happened every now and then, and they can count and document those things. Not like it was a part of what the whole struggle was, and how they were continually trying to adopt their systems to keep this mechanism in place, because we were always pushing back. We were always organizing ourselves to make it through and make it out of that situation.
And I want to also bring up the issue of our culture. Like many of the songs, they talk about the blues. You analyze the poetry of the blues. The poetry of the blues is about love.
Yeah.
Because so many families had to separate. And it's not just in America, the Caribbean also. The men had to come here for work. And so what happened to their families?
Yeah.
Okay, they had to leave their families. In the South, men had to travel long distances for work.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them just gave up on ever getting that family and started a second family because it was so hard for them to reconnect.
Yeah.
The struggles to make sure that coming out of slavery, a brother didn't marry a sister. That took an amazing amount of collaboration.
Wow.
And there were pivotal African males and females who kept the family lineage in their heads so that they could say, no, that's your cousin.
Which gave birth to the idea of family reunion.
Yes.
Like we talk about family reunion right now.
And you have more family reunions than you have ever had.
Yeah.
To me, that does not say that we don't know how to collaborate.
Yeah.
We just have had a horrific war against us on the colonial level. They never meant us to control our economic base in the cities.
Wow.
Every ethnic group that has ever come to this country after World War I immediately knew how to grab the government and put that wealth in America. There's a lot of wealth which they stole from the first people in this country.
Mm-hmm.
The Italians were allowed to do it. The Irish were allowed to do it. The people they call Jews were allowed to do it. But then when it came time for us to take over the city's infrastructure, we could not take it over in the manner that all the other European ethnic groups were able to do so.
Wow.
And that structure that enabled them to keep that wealth was the Democratic Party. Because in Brooklyn, everybody votes Democrat, but they do not get back the wealth for that kind of loyalty that the Europeans, even the Ukrainians, can come here and get jobs quicker than we can get them. That's absurd.
Wow. Oh man. Again, y'all listen to the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club. We got Aunt Betty Davis in the building, man, and she's just dropping jewels, dropping nuggets. We have a couple comments that I wanted to share. Miss Teresa, she said she was basically bearing witness to what she was saying. My parents migrated from North Carolina to Pennsylvania during the Great Migration, like many other Black people, for jobs. She said, yes, teach the children the truth. Rico says we need just that. And then Russia, she was talking about the pilots. She said they call them pilots. Take your intellectual property and then say you were not competent, and we believe them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to emphasize is that when Africans came here, they came with their seeds. I don't know how the world they managed to do that, but they did. And so a lot of the original crops that you claim to be indigenous to America are not. The Africans taught people how to do rice. They came with that knowledge. We weren't captured because we were ignorant.
Right.
We were captured because we knew how to grow rice.
They saw what we were doing over there. Yeah.
We brought those skills from Africa here. You need to go into the history books and look at the original slave bill.
Yeah.
That advertised the slave. It told what skills that captive had.
Say that again.
All right.
The African slave sale advertisements advertised the skills that they had. Wow.
Exactly.
And that increased the value and the asking price of the slave. That's another great point that you don't, or the enslaved. That's something that we don't get either when we talk about it. They talk about it like they did us a favor and they rescued us from some type of horrible conditioning and brought us here and taught us. But what you're saying and reminding us of is when you're trying to build something, you don't go get people who are not builders.
Thank you.
You go get builders, and then you look for engineers, you look for architects, and those are the people who came here,
Exactly.
who were brought here.
And that's why it is absurd when I go in my neighborhood now and I have my home and I cannot find a skilled African, Black who has these particular skills.
Right.
To help with buildings.
Building,
all those
architecture.
because we were valued for that.
Yes.
But when we went to the cities, they would not hire us for that because they wanted to give those jobs to the Italians, to the Irish, to whatever ethnic group they had brought over here lately. And I want to emphasize that every ethnic group that came here had to buy into being super white. And now all of the white people are super white. Okay. When the Italians came here, they were being lynched just like Black people were being lynched,
Yeah.
When the Swedes came here, they mocked them like, you heard the phrase dumb Swede. They had to buy into being super, super white.
Wow.
Okay. But having an ethnic group that you could exploit, they decided based on color, which is a false construct because there's no such thing as race. But there is economic colonialism. And so when people talk about the rise of fascism in America, for Africans, we have always had fascism. That phrase fascism was invented by Mussolini during World War II. You want to tell me that the treatment of Africans started with World War II?
Wow.
So you have to use a different term other than race, because the Europeans made that phrase up to excuse the barbarism that they were using to economically control Africans wherever they are.
Auntie Betty, how long are you in town?
I'm going to be here till Monday, which is Easter.
Okay. Because we got like 3 minutes left, and it goes fast, and it's just so rich.
I just want Floridians to know you are amazing. I want you to know the reason I love my brother so is that he loved his daughters. He raised strong African women.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At a time when America hated women.
Is that your grandfather?
Yes.
Her brother?
Yes. Yes.
The one that the brother she's speaking of.
He didn't raise
that's your
these
granddaddy.
Southern belles.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in Southern belles. He believed in equality for women.
Wow.
And he loved all of his daughters.
Wow. So thank you so much for coming through, and we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do about Friday if you're available. Good Friday. Also, just since we talked about construction, I want to lift up the fact that there is an opportunity for those who are interested in exploring careers in construction. St. Pete College today, actually, when we leave here from 9 a.m. to 12, over at the SBC Midtown campus, you can join this construction expo. It's a hands-on career exploration event where you can discover the latest trends in construction, connect with industry professionals, and expand your network and explore career opportunities. You'll be able to engage in exhibits, attend industry presentations, and experience live demos that will be happening from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Today at SBC at the Midtown campus.
Do you have that flyer?
I can send it, yeah.
You send it?
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
And
it's a
then
great opportunity.
also we have John Bailey. Well, it's final thoughts. I'll do that as my final thoughts. You got final thoughts? Was that your final
No,
thoughts?
I can't follow any of that other than man, it's more
Just
than needs to be
remember,
done
please
than
don't
needs to be
send
said.
items back and donate it to the radio station, please. And I want to give a salute to Florida for supporting the Uhuru 3. Thanks
Yes.
to you, they could not do what they wanted to do to them, which was deny them free speech. That was the first step in the war against denial of free speech, when Florida refused to say what the feds wanted them to say against the Uhuru 3. And I salute Floridians for that courage.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You got something, right?
No, I got nothing. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. I thank you for everything.
Okay, I will say this. Support the group Returning Citizens tonight.
Life from the inside out, yeah.
Yes, will be tonight. If you want to join that support group from 6 to 7 at Enoch Davis Center.
Yep.
Please, if you are a returning citizen and you need a group, this is a group that you should go and
I
talk
want to say
to
that
and get support
because,
system.
because that's another, and just real quick, I know it's time is fleeting, but I think the importance of that sometimes is understated. When you come home and you're trying to find a tribe who really gets it and understands, like it's really hard. And so John Bailey and what he's doing, man, is creating space for those who you have that shared experience to be able to support one another.
Because they don't trust people. It's hard to trust people, but when
It's hard for people to relate.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to really relate to an experience like, okay, you've been away from your family for 7 years in a certain situation and you've never been in that situation. As much as you say you can empathize and all of that, you don't know what it's like. Like, stop playing. And so, but to be around people who really get it and then have resources and tools that can help you and support you through it is very important. So thank you, John Bailey, for creating that space for the brothers and sisters.
So be the change you want to be a see. Write down those 5 things that made you smile, giggle, feel good at the end of the day. And stay tuned for Sister Hughes.
Make you lose your shoes and shout all around the house. This has been the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club. I'm your brother John.
And this is Kiana.
And I'm the one and only Mr. Edmond.